Greetings from the Arcturians. Now, the Arcturians are telling me that President Trump, you are being oblivious when it comes to President Putin's intentions. And I'm being told it's because of your camaraderie with him. All I can say and all we can say at this point is that don't be so oblivious of Putin's intentions, President Trump. And that's why I'm sharing a short 15 minutes news report here for you to watch, so you know what's going on and what's playing out behind the scenes and what Putin's intentions are long term. And this very sensible, extremely sensible and realistic perspective is coming from a General Philip Breedlove. Now, frankly speaking, President Trump, I want to say this to you directly. When President Zelensky visited the White House, you said to President Zelensky that he is gambling with World War III. And of course, let's not forget a nuclear war on top of that. And what I have to say to you, President Trump, is this. It's not President Zelensky who's gambling with World War III and a nuclear war. It's you, President Trump, who's gambling with World War III and a nuclear war on top of that. And we cannot have that. We cannot have you gambling with World War III and a nuclear war on top of that, President Trump. So please, watch this news video. Watch this short 15 minutes news video. It'll be good for you. Maybe it'll help you come out of your oblivion state of mind that you're in regarding President Putin. And the fact that President Putin himself needs a ceasefire right now at this point, but that's only because his military capability is declining. And he wants time to recover. And once he recovers, in a few years' time, he's gonna attack again. And we cannot have that either, President Trump. Are you hearing me right now? Because I'm not President Zelensky, who you're just going to, shut up and shut out. You're not gonna just shut me out and shut me up like you did President Zelensky. Because if you can get loud, President Trump, I can get louder. Because you are gambling with World War III and a nuclear war on top of it, and we cannot allow it. We will not allow you to do that, President Trump. Not happening. Not on my watch, not on our watch. And by our watch, I mean the Arcturians. And Commander Ashtar of Ashtar Galactic Command or Ashtar Command is coming through here as well. So not on his watch either. This will not happen on our watch while we're here on planet Earth. Trying to save humanity, trying to save planet Earth even. And you're sitting there trying to gamble with World War III and a nuclear war on top of it? No. We're not having it. We will not have that, President Trump. And I repeat, you're not gonna shut me up and you're not gonna shut me down like you did President Zelensky. Because we need to put some sense in your head right now. with this particular situation of you gambling with World War III and a nuclear war on top of it. So, we're going to leave you to watch this news video.
I don't want to make news. I'm reading the same news you are reading, but I hear that the supply piece has started again. Excuse me. The withheld portion now is the intelligence, and I've heard no progress on that being reestablished.
It comes after the US halted intelligence sharing with Ukraine this week with immediate effect and immediate impact. It's being described very much as Ukraine fighting blindfolded, is it?
Well, this would be disastrous if it's held for a long time. I'm not sure why our government has chosen to do this, because President Zelensky has stepped back and stepped away from the clash in the Oval Office and made it clear that he's ready to work forward. This seems to be just a sort of a really blunt and crude way to hold them accountable to keep moving forward in that process. It's I don't want to be too critical of my own government, but it's really hard for me to understand right now. On one side, we have a self-avowed war criminal leading an unholy, inhumane, and illegal war, invading a neighbor. And on the other side, we have a nation that has been invaded, literally, if you count Crimea and Donbass differently in 14, they've been invaded 3 times by Russia since the winter of 13-14. And so for some reason, we have decided that we have to treat the aggressor, the war criminal, with kid gloves and treat that person one way. And then on the other side of the coin, the aggrieved nation, the nation that's been invaded, we sort of are treating them with a sledgehammer. And it's really hard for me to sort out why we've chosen this particular approach to the antagonist and to the aggrieved in this conflict.
And the suspension of this military intelligence by the US, what does it mean Ukraine cannot now do?
Well, they do have some of our precise weapons yet in their country, long-range precise weapons. They have long-range precise weapons that have been supplied by European nations, and they are getting better and better at building long-range precise weapons of their own. And all of those need precise targeting. We call it mensurated coordinates in order to strike precisely. And the United States' technical ability to supply that intelligence is incredibly important to their continued success with these long-range strikes.
It's uncertain how long the military aid supplies will be suspended as well. What supplies are we talking about? And how long before the suspension really causes harm to Ukraine's ability to keep on fighting?
I don't want to make news. I'm reading the same news you are reading, but I hear that the supply piece has started again. Excuse me. The withheld portion now is the intelligence, and I've heard no progress on that being reestablished.
And if it's true that those military supplies have been reestablished, because there was hope, I mean, in the last 24 hours, it was talk that was a very strong possibility. Great news if it is actually happening. Not the first time that Ukraine has had to contend, though, without US supplies. They stopped for months in the first half of last year when an assistance package was blocked by Republicans. How damaging was it back then? And how well has Ukraine built up its resilience?
Well, it was extremely damaging. What happens is when your ammunition is cut off, you cannot keep expending ammunition at the rate that your military needs to use it. You have to begin to, if you'll allow the word, ration and control how you use it. So you slow down your firing. At one point last year, depending on who you wanted to listen to, Russia was firing between 6 and 8 shells for every 1 shell Ukraine could fire. And that's when Ukrainians started backing up in the Donbass. And frankly, Kate, even though we may have restarted, we don't know yet, but the rumor is that we've restarted. We have slowed down the process over the past 3 or 4 weeks, such that even though we were still supplying some things, the amount we were supplying was cut drastically. And so Ukraine had to, almost 3 weeks ago, start rationing again and shooting less ammunition again. And so they've been in a natural slowdown to try to preserve what they had. And if we don't restart those supplies, the end result is many, many more Ukrainian soldiers will die based on our decisions here in the West.
On the political front, bridges appear to be being built after the very public breakdown in relations between Donald Trump and President Zelensky in Washington. He does appear to be being strong-armed back to the negotiating table over this withholding of intelligence, American intelligence. But the deal that Donald Trump so badly wants on rare minerals, how important do you think that is to both Donald Trump's interest in Ukraine and its security?
So, Kate, here is one of the places where I actually agree to a certain degree with what our president has said about this deal. Make no mistake, this is a business deal. But the fact that the United States and Ukraine would enter into a pretty significant arrangement and what looks to be an enduring arrangement, I agree that even though it is a business deal, that association will add to the security of Ukraine, because I believe the United States in the end game would protect whatever interest, especially if they become involved in building and removing and all of that. So we have to agree that while it is a business deal, it could tangentially help develop a more secure relationship. But let's go back to the first part of your question. As I said before, we have on one side a nation that is the aggressor and carrying on an illegal, inhumane, unholy war. And on the other side, we have an aggrieved nation that is the victim of that war. And I don't understand, frankly, why we are treating one side with such kid gloves and we are hammering the other side, explaining to them what they're going to have to give up and they have to come to the table.
On that point about the minerals deal, where you say it is a business deal, but it could have some kind of implications for better security for Ukraine, the counter argument that has been made to me is that when Russia launched the full-scale invasion in 2022, there were American businesses in Kyiv that just upped sticks and went.
You're correct. I mean, those are facts. I think the scale of this and the fact that the president of the United States is so personally connected to this deal makes the former less visible and important than the latter.
How realistic do you think an armistice or ceasefire is this year?
How many ceasefires, how many agreements has Russia broken in its past? History speaks for itself. All the way back to the Budapest Memorandum, where Russia was one of 3 signatory nations that assured the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. And they broke it by invading now 3 times. All along the way, Minsk 1, Minsk 2, every agreement that Russia has signed up to, they've broken. So I am not particularly hopeful that anything they sign in the future they'll stand up to. You have heard, maybe even you have heard me talk about the Russian saying, often attributed to Lenin, that when you approach your enemy, fix your bayonet, press your bayonet into the enemy's stomach, and if it is soft, press further and deeper. If it is hard, withdraw and reconsider. So Mr. Putin hasn't run up against anything hard yet. the West has demonstrated that they will back up when Mr. Putin comes forward. We talk about to avoid escalation, And what that has cost us is 20% of Georgia and now 23 to 24% of Ukraine, because Russia has never hit anything hard. Until they do, I expect they will continue to break agreements.
And when you cite those agreements, those ceasefires from history that have not worked, what do you think needs to be in any new agreement to prevent that from happening again?
Security guarantees for Ukraine. Remember that the Budapest Memorandum was supposed to be a security, the words assurance was used rather than guarantee, but the assurances were for the security of Ukraine, and that didn't work. Now, Mr. Zelensky, and more importantly, the people of Ukraine, need security guarantees from hard power.
From the US?
From hard power. There's a lot of hard power in Europe, too. The US has to be a part of it.
So when President Macron of France talks about a truce, a period of time, a month, where you might halt the air and sea attacks and find out whether or not Putin is really serious about holding the peace. I mean, can you possibly evaluate that in a month?
Well, first, let me applaud President Macron, because he's trying. I mean, we now have very important nations, UK, France, and to some degree even Germany, beginning to talk about real change to try to affect this bad behavior of Russia and Mr. Putin. And so a month, I agree with you, is not going to show long-term commitment, but it's a start. What we would not want to do is give away any of the forcing functions we have, sanctions and other things, until we got demonstrated commitment by Russia. May I just say, Kate, that it's not surprising to me that Russia is at least intimating that it's willing to talk, because Russia's army is beaten up right now. Russia desperately needs a pause in the fighting. Think about this. Russia has now had to ask North Korea twice to come help them retake sovereign Russian land. That would be like us asking you guys to come back across the Atlantic Ocean and help defend us from an enemy somewhere. Russia's army desperately needs a ceasefire. And so maybe that is the impetus to actually get a little more enduring ceasefire. But I would expect, based on history, Georgia, Crimea, Donbass, 22, all of Ukraine, that pattern of demonstration is, as soon as Putin's army is ready again, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, unless we show him a hard front, he will be back for more.
And if a peace treaty is eventually signed, it does have to be underpinned, as you say, by a security guarantee, because it's predicted, unravel within a decade if it isn't. You say it has to be underpinned by a hard power. What other hard powers are there that could do this credibly if it isn't the US?
Well, frankly, based on what I just said to you, if all we had to do was worry about a land war, EU, NATO could handle it. Because again, right now, Russia's army is in a mess. They desperately need a ceasefire to get back together again, like they have in the past. And so I think that to a sense of land capability, Europe and the EU is more than capable of that. But what Europe and the EU need America desperately for is intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. You call it ISTAR. They need a long-range strike capability. They need air power that can penetrate the Russian air defenses. Russia needs to understand that if they break the treaty or the agreement, that they can and will be struck. And that is something that America can bring to the table.
You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Chabot. If you'd like to be the first to get exclusive content, you can sign up for membership with the link below. You can also listen to Times Radio for the latest news or read it on thetimes.com.